collective, I mean, as a collective thing, I'm saying that it's actually the thing referring to itself. Like, you could look at this as like an organism that decides for itself, like, what it should do. I mean, do you think that you have the right to do what do you believe in, like, personal liberty and self-autonomy, that you should be able to do what you would like with your own life?
Um, to a degree, no. Like if you watch my YouTube channel, I have a video on about, uh, and I know this would be an extreme case, but I have a video on about suicide and how suicide is a selfish act. Like I don't think that you actually have the choice to, like if you're talking about like do you want to get a piercing in your ear or do you
Well, what
want
if I told you that, you had to stop studying psychology and you had to go be uh, an HVAC technician?
you'd have to come up with a reason on why I'd have to stop
No,
studying
I don't,
psychology.
because you don't think that it's important for you to have personal autonomy. I can just tell you whatever you like, what you should do with your life.
In that sense, I wouldn't agree with it. But if you were to tell me, like if I was making a video or I was on this Google Hangout right now, decided, I'm just gonna off myself, you would have the responsibility to tell me that it's not a morally correct thing to do, though.
Yeah, and I don't know if I'd say that it's immoral to kill yourself. I don't think, especially to a suicidal person, I wouldn't choose those particular words. But yeah, I would definitely say that that's probably a negative outcome. I mean, but let's flip it around. I mean, let's say someone is like gravely injured. Like, let's say you've been in some terrible accident and like you've lost both of your legs and the use of both of your arms. You're just going to basically be a stump on life support for the rest of your life. Do you think that it's immoral for a person in that circumstance to want to put themselves out of their misery? I mean, there are things that through modern science that we can survive that we really ought not to. So what's your position on someone who takes their life under those circumstances?
My position on that is that it affects other people and it affects their way of life. Like if I
Well,
offer,
what about those other people that are going to have to continue to see you suffer for months or years beyond taking this effectively life-ending injury?
in other words, like restate that because I'm not sure.
Well, let's say that like I mean, you've got friends and family who are going to be watching you suffer as you're in this shattered state, right?
Yeah,
That's going to negatively impact them as well, right?
it would.
Yeah. So I mean, do you think that that's worse than I get? Is that worse than having them understand that you're no longer alive? Like, would your death be worse than watching you suffer for an extended period?
Um, I would say no for one reason. Um, because of the advancements that we have in technology and medicine and stuff like that. Like what?
Sorry, phone call.
Oh, it's all, you can take it if you want. I mean, I don't know.
No, I'll call back.
What I guess what I'm saying is, with the advancements and stuff that we have in medicine and technology and things like that, because I'm pretty sure by the conversation with David that like most creationists, or I don't even use that term really, but most people that are theists sort of get the argument that we don't believe in science and stuff like that. Like I'm sure you understand that me and David aren't that extreme on it. That we do support evolution, we do support science. Like science is a credible thing, and I would say that because of our advancements, how do I say this? I don't think that I don't think I mean I know that it would affect them, but I don't think that I don't think that it would justify like euthanasia or something like that for the simple fact that there's always like there's every day science is coming out with new things to be able to save lives. And granted, your quality of life may be down or may not be as good as it was before the accident or whatever happened, but the choice to euthanize does affect the people that are close to that person. I mean, like they should have a say in it too.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with you on that. I don't know if it's actually moral to compel someone to continue to suffer on and on this pie in the sky hope that maybe someday they'll find a way to fix your body and time, you know, you have to live this tortured existence, being kept alive by machines and whatnot, but, you know, maybe we'll fix you. Don't kill yourself. You know, you don't have that right.
I would disagree. I wouldn't.
Hold on, please.
Okay.
All right, sorry.
That's okay.
So yeah, I'm not sure that that's, you know, I would say that that's the moral thing to do. That's kind of, you know, more, I would say that suicide is generally a wrong choice for people, but I think there are exceptions to that, and I think that would be an example of one of them. You know, I think that it would kind of be immoral to not give someone that option, because you do have a right to end your suffering if you have decided for yourself that your suffering is so great that you simply can't live with it anymore.
Well, I don't know. I guess we're just gonna have to agree to disagree on this, but I mean, still, I don't see any reason, any objective reason to say why it's wrong.
Say why what's wrong?
Why euthanasia or committing suicide or something like that's wrong. I mean, there's a whole plethora of topics that we could bring up in this, like the one that you guys talked about last time with.
Well, I'm not saying that it's wrong either. I mean, I think I don't think for that exception. You know, I think that in general you shouldn't make that decision. I'm anti-suicide. I'm going to take that position. But I think there are exceptions to that, and I don't think that it's immoral for someone whose life is effectively over and is, you know, being maintained through some artificial means, that if not for that, they would be dead already, and they have really no realistic outcomes for a successful, happy life after that. Yeah, I don't think it's immoral for someone to end their life or be assisted to end their life in that way.
Well, I think I think, and how would you come up with that objective, or with, see, in other words, by saying that, I think you're making morality arbitrary or subjective by saying that, though.
Yes, because morality is subjective.
But then again, I guess if we come back to the same question that we had before as to what makes it subjective, what makes, like, in other words, what would make something right for me but not right for you, or vice versa?
I don't know. Do we generally think that? I mean, like, isn't that one of the you know, the understood rules that what's fair for me is fair for you? Equality?
Not when it comes to morality. I don't think so.
No? Like, I'm not allowed to kill, but you are allowed to kill?
I don't think anybody would be allowed to kill, but...
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like, you know, in that sense, like, I'm not sure what your point is.
But what would make killing wrong, is what I'm asking. Like, why...
That you're taking another human's life, that you wouldn't want another human being to do it to you, and you recognize that there's a negative impact to the rest of your culture if there's this tradition where people are just killing each other willy-nilly with no consequences, for no real reason.
But again, what makes that wrong? Like, in other words,
because it negatively impacts the quality of everyone's life. Like, you can measure that objectively.
I guess in essence, what I'm saying, okay, so Charles Manson, he completed his goal of the shock and awe and doing what he did and getting the attention, and still to this day, like, he still gets the attention from it. I mean, I know I've talked to him before, so guy's a complete nut job, but that's neither here nor there. But in his mind, what he did was the right thing. What he did was what he deemed right to do.
And what happened to him?
He's in prison.
Yep. Because he was wrong.
But he was wrong according to who? He was wrong according to the judicial system. Yeah. But he was not wrong according.
What's that an extension of?
What's the judicial system an extension of?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a codification of the society that it's in. It's their morals, what they think is the right thing to do.
exactly what you just said, the society and what their morals are and what they think is right to do. But who says that the ad populum or the society is deciding what's morally correct for everybody? I mean, in other words, like
that is descriptive of the case in fact. Like, you know, that is what it is. I don't understand the question.
well, what I'm asking is, okay, yeah. So for the judicial system and the people that support it, which would probably be the majority of the people, think that Manson should be in prison. Still, according to his own morality, he did what was right. He did what he thought was the correct thing to do.
Well, first of all, he says what he thinks that what he did was right. I mean, you know, I'm not suggesting this that I have any serious or strong evidence of this, but like, you know, it's possible that Manson's just like a fucking psychotic troll. Like, he knows what he did was wrong. He just did it, as you said, to get attention. And, you know, he knows deep down what he did is wrong, but he'll spend the rest of his life in prison and enjoy his notoriety in some deranged way. And, you know, that's a possibility that he also knows that it is wrong on some level. But regardless, that's how we judge things like that. We have arbiters, we evaluate laws in specific cases and render a judgment. You could probably take Charles Manson to, you know, any society or civilization that's ever lived and, you know, try him there. Communicate to those people what he did, and almost all of them are going to come up with, you know, the idea that yes, this man has violated the most basic codes of even their civilization. Like, he's a bad dude. Like, there's not a whole lot of discussion on that, and the reason why that's so is because societies have deemed it so. It's not that it was written in the sky. We sorted that out on our own.
But like the key words you just said was that most people would admit that. Like, who are we to? In other words, so okay, so most people would admit that murdering people is wrong, and I would agree with you more than likely there. But there's going to be a remnant of people that will say murder is not wrong. What, like,
is
where?
There really? I mean, like, maybe a small residual outlier, but I bet if you went out and interviewed 100 people, you'd get 100 answers that murder is wrong.
Yeah, but let's just say that I interviewed 100 people, and 99% said what's wrong. Like, who are we to impose a subjective morality on that one person?
What I'm saying is you have to go out to maybe, you know, 10,000 or 1,000,000 people, and then maybe you'll get one or two that will give you some loopy answer. But I think most people understand that murder is wrong because of the reasons that I described before. That there's this understanding that that we all have this equality under these rules, that they all apply to all of us, that, you know, what's right for me is what's right for another person. And I wouldn't want another person to murder me, therefore I shouldn't murder other people. Like, that's a basic one.
And I would say that most people would probably agree with you, but again, we're imposing a subjective morality on the people that would say that it isn't.
We're not imposing anything. Morality is subjective. I mean, that is the description. You keep saying, but why is that so? Why is that so? Well, that's just the way that it is. That's literally how we come to agreement on this. In fact.
But now you just said that's the way that it is. Now you're imposing an absolute argument. So are you saying that there's a such thing as absolutes?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm not imposing an absolute argument. I'm saying that is the correct description for the world as it is seen.
So would there be ever be any kind of position or anything that would ever tell you that maybe murder isn't wrong?
Okay, like, let's say you get in a time machine and you go back to, like, Austria in, like, late 20s, early 30s, and you find, like, a teenage Adolf Hitler, and you know what he's going to do.
Yeah.
He will end up bringing so much pain and suffering to the world that it'll reshape the whole world. It'll change generations.
Yeah.
He was a monster. I mean, I think we can all agree on that.
I'm sure most of us would.
Would it be the better thing to do to remove Hitler so that the Nazis never came to power?
As in remove him, as in like.
Murder him, yes. Kill him right there.
No.
So you wouldn't kill Hitler if you had the chance to?
Murder is a morally wrong thing.
But it would, if you don't, he'll end up murdering so many more people than just him.
I have an ethical question for the both of you to answer. I just want to know.
I'd like to just get the answer to just get that cleared before we jump into something else.
Well, he said no.
Yeah, I would agree that killing Hitler would be the wrong thing to do.
I just want to ask you guys, both of you. I just want to ask you both this ethical question. Have you guys seen the movie Sophia's Choice?
I haven't.
Oh, you guys definitely should. It's about this woman that in Nazi Germany that she's Jewish and she was taken to a concentration camp. She wasn't taken, but she was she was stopped by a Nazi guard in her car, and he gave her a choice. He said, because she has 2 children, and she said he's gonna give her, I think, a week to decide which one of her children she would give up to be murdered, or he was just gonna take both of them and murder them both. In that situation, which one do you think would be the correct thing to do?
Not allow either one of her children to be killed.
Well, she doesn't have that choice.
Try to avoid that consequence entirely, but if it's a certain thing where it's a choice between one life or 2 lives, I think most people, maybe not most, I can't say that with certainty, but I think many people would certainly choose the lesser loss of life to give up one. I don't know how they would make that decision, but I think most people would recognize the value in at least saving the one life.
Now, okay, I guess we'll get farther.
What I just want to say about both of those examples, killing Hitler and Sophie's Choice, that the reason why they're interesting is because they are moral conundrums. There isn't really a clear-cut answer. I mean, I agree that murdering Hitler would be immoral. Do I think it would be the lesser of 2 evils? Yes. Would I kill him? Probably. Assuming that it doesn't do some Back to the Future destruction of the timeline and everybody fades out of existence and I disappear from the Polaroid or whatever. But I would definitely try to preserve life in that situation, in either of those situations. Maybe you wouldn't because you're constrained by this other, this other concept of what would be the moral thing to do. That's why morality is subjective.
Okay, so let me ask you a question then. Let's go back to around the same time that you said. We'll go back to a few months before Hitler was born. Knowing the destruction that he would cause and the heartache that he caused for people, would you say that, okay, well, she's pregnant with Hitler? Would you be all right with offing his mom so that she didn't give birth to him, or?
Again, if I knew that the world would turn out a better place, yeah, possibly. I mean, that's kind of I could see an argument made either way. I mean, that one's actually harder, for most people to figure through instinctively, because she's one more removed. She certainly hasn't done anything wrong. Hitler's mom, I'm sure, was a decent person, or I don't know, maybe she wasn't. But she certainly doesn't deserve to have Hitler's crimes laid at her feet. That seems wrong to me.
Okay.
But if you're going by that absolute moral of, or that overarching moral is what I should say, setting the higher priority to the preservation of life, the lesser of 2 evils, whatever we want to say. Yeah, I think that if I make an argument that the right thing to do would be
So to kill an innocent person,
Hitler would have also been an innocent person. I mean, he hadn't actually done anything yet. That would still be murder.
Well, I'm just saying, if we had the foreknowledge of what he was going to do, would it make it correct?
But if you're saying that standard for Hitler, then logically you could also extend that to Hitler's mom, because you would be avoiding the same consequences, and you're basically still doing the same thing. You're damning someone who has not actually done any of those things. You're condemning them for future crime.
Okay. Well, I guess I guess we're gonna have to kind of agree to disagree here.
All right. Well, can I ask you a question?
You can ask me anything you want to.
Why do you think that your standard of morality is in fact objective?
Because it's what the Bible says.
The Bible was written by a guy.
The Bible was inspired by God.
It was written by many people. What you're talking about is, it sounds delusional.
No,
you
we're
can't
not.
really prove that God had a hand in it at all. What you can demonstrate is that it was written by many people and it changed
Well, I mean, no, like.
times over thousands of years.
Well, I mean, like at the end of each chapter, you're not going to see written by Paul, inspired by Jesus, or anything like that. But it was an eyewitness testimony.
Nobody was an eyewitness to any of the events. Well, I mean, Paul was, an eyewitness to what Paul was doing. And that's that. But even the stories in the Old Testament, those were written centuries after the events that they're supposed to be describing. The Exodus and all that. Centuries, if not 1,000 years or more, separated from some of those historical events. Those are the oldest copies that we have of the Old Testament. They're I think around 500 BC.
Yeah, we do have some pretty old copies. Again, which I think would.
But only back to 500 BC. I mean, human civilization extends for thousands of years before that.
Well, I actually believe, I would probably say I wouldn't take the young Earth approach and be like 6,000 to 10,000 years. That isn't anything.
No, just human civilization, the ancient Egyptians, the ancient civilizations in China that we found archaeological evidence of, people have built cities, wrote shit down, civilization.
Oh yeah, I agree.
It goes back a few thousand years before the oldest copies of the Old Testament that we have, and the people that they're describing, the era that Moses was around in, the era that Abraham was around in. The oldest copies we have of this would have been centuries or thousands of years after those events. So, but those weren't written by eyewitnesses, as best we can prove. And the same for Jesus. The oldest copies of the Gospels that are the account of Jesus are at least a generation or two, if not more, removed.
Yeah, but those are okay. Those are the oldest copies that we have. Yes,
and we're good at finding lots of old shit, and the oldest ones that we found, they're, like I said, generations after Jesus' death. Except for Paul. Paul was the next generation.
Well, I guess my defense for that would be is that even in the oldest manuscripts that we have are not the original copies of it. In other words, I can't tell you exactly when the other manuscripts were written because we don't have them to be able to do carbon dating or radiometric dating or anything like that to be able to try to date them.
Right, but the copies that we do have show that there have been numerous additions, numerous revisions, countless, problems and errors in translation, transcription. It's clearly a product of man. It's flawed, in the same way that all old books that have been copied and recopied are. Exactly what you'd expect. I mean, it's clearly a man-made thing. It's not. It is not demonstrably of God. You're saying those words, but to me, you're just saying words.
Well, okay. What I'm saying is I don't think that I would say that there have been errors found in manuscripts as far as copyist errors, but the message of them hasn't changed. You know what I mean? In other there's still I wish I could remember the example. There's
I can think of cases where the message has changed. The ending of the Gospel of Mark. In almost every Bible, it's the last several verses are offset, and usually there's a notation that our oldest transcripts, our oldest manuscripts don't have this, and they've actually found where and when these verses began to appear, that they are confirmed as being a later addition to the gospel. And
and there's a reason for that.
Those verses off, the apostles just never spoke about Jesus again, and it's not really clear that he actually rose from the dead. It's kind of dark, but with the extra verses, it ends on a much more positive note. So yes, there have been additions that have changed the meaning and the inevitable interpretation of the gospel,
No,
of the message.
and I think what a good are you a reader? Do you read like any kind of books or anything like that?
I can read, yeah.
I mean, I know you can read, but do you?
Yeah, I do from time to time read, yeah.
Like there's a book on this. It's called The King James Only Controversy by James R. White. Are you familiar with who he is?
No, I haven't read anything from him.
Okay, I've read a ton from him. He's really good. The explanation that's offered up by people who deal with the manuscripts and stuff is a lot of those generally. I guess what happened along the lines of like you ever see a textbook and off to the side there's a foot.
Right, I've actually heard. I'm gonna blank on his name. He's I believe he's actually an atheist, but he speaks pretty strongly in favor of the historical Jesus. Bart Ehrman. I've heard him explain that. I'm sorry if I'm interrupting you. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that basically these were written in the columns because these were part of the oral tradition, and eventually later scribes were like, well, if this is part of the oral tradition and this is what was written down supplementally, we'll just include it in the body of the text.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. They would have a footnote, and the footnote, I don't know if they marked them well enough or something, but a lot of the footnotes wound up being translated into the text. So in other words, like a footnote, like if you ever see a footnote in a textbook or whatever, and the reason why you kind of see me looking up is because I'm dual screening it right now. I'm looking at both screens.
That's fine.
Is a lot of times they would take this manuscript and then they would retranslate it or recopy it, and a lot of times they would copy them footnotes into the text. So when you're seeing, depending on which Bible version you've read or if you have one or if you study it at all. I mean, I know you're an atheist, but even atheists like to look at the Bible because there is a lot of good historical content in there. Depending on which version you have, they'll either put brackets around it or they'll take it out and put it at the bottom.
That's the main reason why atheists read the Bible.
Probably not. Probably not.
Regardless, I mean, my point was that we can see these changes. I mean, however they came to be, wherever they were copied from, whatever manuscripts they came from, we see that it has changed. It was written by men. It's rewritten by men. We can trace back its history and see that it's clearly this book that there's no indication looking at it that it's anything more than a book written by people about their history and their traditions, their laws, their ideals.
No, I don't deny that it was written by men, but the things that the things that are often criticized, we can actually come up with a defense for on why they are the way they are. Why there's.
I mean, yeah, you can come up with a justification for all sorts of things, but at the end of the day, we're still left with this is a book written by a guy, and you're calling it an objective moral. I mean,
because the principles in it.
I don't think that's the case. I don't think that's even the case with you or with David. I mean, I can give you an example. In the book, in the Bible, they talk quite a bit about slavery. That it's condoned, like the circumstances under which people can be a slave, different classes of them, and how you're allowed to treat them, the punishments you're allowed to mete out to them, and the responsibilities you have to them. Like they talk a lot about it. You don't think slavery is moral? I'm not even going to put the question to you. I know the answer to that already.
You would be correct. You would be correct in
saying. Not the gospel. You disagree with the Bible on that.
No.
So you use something other than the Bible to come to that. Like you look to the rest of society. You look to history. You look to American history with slavery, where this is still something that was so documented and fresh, and that's something that we can definitely look to as a 21st century culture and say with a loud voice, yeah, that's wrong.
Well, yeah, but I actually
perspective that the authors of the gospel didn't have, and so you have a different morality than they did.
Well, no, I would disagree with that. I mean, you are correct in saying that I would say slavery is wrong, but the reason why I would disagree with it is for the simple fact that in context, the Bible is not talking about the same type of slavery that we know in American or.
You're talking about the same type of slavery. Yes,
no, it isn't.
Slavery where you own somebody. Yeah, you can beat a slave, and so long as he doesn't die within a certain number of days, that's legal. I mean, that's I don't know what other kind of slavery there is than, you know, that's the slavery kind of slavery. That's the bad kind of slavery.
Well,
like, you know, that's why we still don't practice that kind of slavery. I mean,
well, the difference.
Indentured servitude is okay.
That's I actually.
Well, answer that question. Do you think their kind of slavery is all right?
Do I think indentured servitude is okay? You said. Is that
whatever type of slavery, however you, yes, I use the term indentured servitude, but let me clarify. If you would describe it in some different way, that's fine, but however you describe it, the slavery that is condoned in the Bible, would you say that it's all right to have that kind of slavery in our society today?
Well, to me, in essence, we still do have that kind of slavery in society today, and I'll explain why. I know it's a bit of a radical statement, but I'll explain why. The biblical definition of slavery is, let's just say, a Jew entered into an agreement and came into a debt with a Gentile because of the position the Jew had, believing that they were more worthy than the Gentile or something to that effect. They would basically sell out their service or sell out themselves, to be completely honest, to a rich Jew to work off the debt that they have with the Gentile. In other words, it's sort of like I guess the way I would describe it as a caste system. In other words, back then, like the Jews believed they were God's chosen people, and at first they were.
That's one of the types of slavery.
That's the type of slavery that's in the Bible.
Right. That's one of the types of slavery they describe. No, there's other types. I mean, they have different rules for how you are allowed to treat Gentile slaves, for instance.
Well, define what you mean by that, so I can make it so I can address that.
But they have rules for how Jewish slave owners are supposed to handle Jewish slaves, and they have further subdivisions with that. You know, for example, if he's not just a Jewish slave, but he's your brother, you have these additional rules that you also have to follow.
But that was
right. But they also have slavery whereby the Jewish slave owner has a non-Jewish slave and a separate set of rules for those, which aren't quite as nice as the ones of Jews having Jews. That's also condoned in the Bible, and it's different from the one that you said would be okay, and you know you think you can find a parallel for. Would you think that the slavery of the relationship that was described between Jews and Gentiles is moral? Because that actually, I think, more closely parallels the slavery that we would recognize from the pre-Civil War era in this country.
Would I say that's moral? No.
Yes, because that's condoned in the Bible. So you obviously part company with the authors of the Bible, and you use some other standard than the Bible to arrive at that conclusion.
No, not necessarily. And the reason why I'll explain that is this: like even today, the Bible commands us. Let's just say Mitt Romney became president. I wasn't a Mitt Romney fan. I voted for Obama and all that stuff. Now, let's just say Mitt Romney became president. Because of his office, like we still are given direction that we have to.
Mitt Romney wouldn't be able to come to my house and beat me.
No, he wouldn't be able to come to your house and beat you. No.
He legally would not be allowed to do that. If he did that, he would be tried as any other citizen. Like that, if you're trying to say that, you know, because we owe allegiance to the office of the President of the United States, that we are all in fact slaves, like I'm not following this.
Well, in essence, that is what I'm saying, because we're told to follow our leaders, even if.
But that's completely dissimilar from the relationship of slavery that is condoned in the Bible. I mean, Mitt Romney can't come and beat me. Mitt Romney doesn't actually own me. President Obama doesn't actually own me. Neither can he come and beat me. You know, if I disagree with him, if I put something up on my Facebook wall that says that, you know, he's a jerkhead, you know, he can't do any of those things to me. He's bound by the same rules. He has more responsibilities. He has an illustrious position, but under the law, we are judged equally. Like we are equals.
Yeah, but at the same time, we wouldn't be allowed to, as far as a Christian goes, we wouldn't be allowed to, take the law into our own hands. You know what I mean?
Sure, but like that's not just Christian morality. That's just You know, everybody agrees with that. You know, at least in our society does.
Well, and there's a reason for that too, because it's what's morally correct. In other words, we have to go.
That's because you've been taught that is what is morally correct.
Like I said in the beginning, I used to be an atheist too, dude.
Yeah.
So like I used to agree with your worldview, and.
But that's not. It's not just a worldview. I mean, I'm describing the world as it is. I mean that's just a description of how, you know, the relationship, our legal relationships, our governmental structure. I mean, this is just I hesitate to use the word objective, but I'm gonna. Yeah, it's an objective perspective on how the world works. It's just describing it.
And you actually did use the correct word in objective, and the reason why is because that's how we're supposed to be. You know what I mean?
No. I'm saying that the description is objective. I'm just trying to, you know, without any sort of colored language or any great interpretation, describe the law as it exists and how it came about. And I think a good instance of a good example that shows that you and other Christians follow this law that is other than the Bible, that you have this understanding of what is correct, that is dissimilar from the Bible, that the Bible says that these things are allowed, and yet you and David and I'm sure almost every Christian in the world would say is not correct, and that specific case is slavery. I mean, we could go to the I forgot the name of the particular tribe, that there was a mandate from God that they all be exterminated, like men, women, children, all of them. The Amalekites. In the Old Testament, there was a mandate from God, like just wipe out the Amalekites. And if there were Amalekites around today, would you think that it was a moral thing to just kill an Amalekite just for being an Amalekite? Like, you know, let's say he was your neighbor, nice guy.
Well,
Walked your dog when you went on vacation, you know, you like him. Would you just kill him because it says in the Old Testament to kill Amalekites?
Usually, in any case that I've ever seen, like in the case of Noah's Ark, when he basically gave the order to take everybody out, but whoever was on the boat. There's a reason for that, and the reason for that is usually a sin-deprived or a sin-filled nation. In other words, a nation that has completely rejected him. So would I personally have a problem with it? Like, yeah, I mean, honestly, I don't want anyone to die, so I wouldn't personally have a problem with it. But if that's what's correct, that's what's correct. But it wouldn't be like I could never go under the moniker of a Christian serial killer, because those terms are like diametrically opposite. So, but it's,
oh, wait a second. You're saying that if you had an Amalekite neighbor and it said that it was okay, I mean, he had done nothing that you could prove was criminal in any way, and for all intents and purposes, this is murder. It would be okay to murder him out of hand just because it said so in the Bible.
I wouldn't personally myself. I wouldn't personally be okay with it, but if it's a commandment, it's a commandment. I mean, in other words, but you're putting me in a hypothetical situation that we couldn't ever be in.
Yeah, I'm appealing to you as an arbiter of these things. You know, you said that you wouldn't want to kill him personally. You wouldn't want to. You'd recognize it as a commandment and it was the right thing to do, but you personally wouldn't do it.
I wouldn't want to. No.
Well,
I mean, but at the same time,
you know, don't go halfway. Go all the way. I mean, don't say I don't want to. Like, would you do it or not?
Would I do it if it was the correct thing to do? Then, I mean, yeah, but you're putting me in a situation that will never face.
Would you think it was the correct thing to do? I mean, like, he's not a criminal. He just happens to be descended from this one tribe that had this serious beef with the ancient Hebrews.
Well,
so
in a Calvinistic perspective, we're all criminals, every one of us. Me, you, David, everybody.
Yeah, but I'm asking you, would you use that? I mean, you obviously don't use that as a standard, you know, in general, because if everybody's a criminal and they're all deserving of murder, then you would just be running around murdering everybody.
Well, I mean,
you feel justified for it.
Oh, well, according to
they're all criminals, why not?
According to the Calvinistic perspective, we all deserve hell. It's just every one of us, me included.
does that mean that everybody, that you would be justified in killing somebody if you had no other evidence that they had done something wrong?
Yeah.
Isn't that kind of like saying murder is okay? Doesn't that kind of violate that commandment?
I don't necessarily think so, but and the reason why I don't think so is like I said, every time something like that is commanded, it's because of the nation that's turned against him. Now, obviously, living.
No, I'm asking you. I'm sorry. You said before that in the Calvinist worldview that everybody is a criminal.
Yes.
And everyone is deserving of hell.
Yes.
I mean, would you say that because they are criminals and they're deserving of this most extreme punishment, that it would be okay to murder people because they're criminals?
That's not my position to judge somebody. That's to be.
Okay, because that's kind of what you said about the Amalekites, that well, everybody's a criminal, so they're also criminals, so it really wouldn't be murder.
Yeah, but it's not.
I'm wondering if that extended beyond that as well.
No, I mean we're in the new covenant now. It's not our position to. In other words, I can't make a judgment as to whether, like me personally, like we were talking about Charles Manson before. I'm totally against the death penalty, and to me, it would be morally wrong to kill Charles Manson. It's just like you were talking about how would it be wrong to kill Hitler before, like if we had the foreknowledge of what he was going to do, and then we lived back in his time. I would agree that it would be immoral to kill Hitler also.
Okay, I mean then that's fine. I mean I don't know whether I would actually kill any of those people, but I could see the argument made that it would not be the wrong choice to do, that it would be the better thing for the world to actually take those actions. And that's why I think that morality is subjective. I mean, I'm kind of at a loss still as to what you would do with your poor Amalekite neighbor. That whether would you kill him or would you not?
Well, I can't say that I'd ever be put in that position because again,
assume you are for sake of argument.
But the thing about it is it's not my position to judge somebody as to whether they're worthy of death or not. So, and I don't agree with it.
Assume for a moment that you are in that position, that you have the opportunity. No one's going to see it happen. You could do it, and you could get away with it. You have this commandment from the Old Testament that says that they have to die, man, woman, and child. Do you actually heed that?
I'm not God, so I can't make that decision.
Well, he gave you the commandment, so would you do it because it says so to do it in the Bible, or would you not do it because you recognize that this guy hasn't actually done anything that deserves death?
But that would have been under the Old Covenant. We're not under the Old Covenant or the Old laws anymore. So that's my defense for that. In other words,
so the immutable, objective laws of God are in fact changing over time?
No, I wouldn't say that because in essence, he's still going to die. He's still going to go.
Yeah, but then why did he bother? Why did he bother telling anybody to bother killing an Amalekite to begin with?
Well,
wouldn't matter. They're all going to die eventually. I'll sort it out in the end.
Then that's exactly what's going to happen.
But that's not what happened. He gave a commandment for them to kill the Amalekites because obviously, it was important to him.
Well, yeah, he also gave a commandment for Noah to build the ark, and again, that's one of them kind of, like, if we're going to get into Noah's ark or whatever, I know you weren't talking about that.
I brought up Noah's ark.
I know, I did. But it's a topic I generally avoid, but I'm not afraid to.
That's kind of, it's actually an older story than Hebrews. Like, it exists in the oldest story that we've ever found. The Epic of Gilgamesh.
Yeah,
the story appears there.
It exists in a lot of older civilizations. Like Christianity is not the world's oldest religion.
It's a traditional story that ended up being copied into the Bible and retold.
That's not the defense. That's not what I would say. The reason why, from the time that they started.
Well, you're an apologist, so you're going to come up with a different answer. But the understanding that I have from reading the Epic of Gilgamesh and the explanation from scholars who have studied these ancient texts is exactly that. That it's a traditional story. It's been passed around to a lot of civilizations. The Hebrews who originally wrote down the Old Testament heard it.
Yeah, but
it was a good moral that they could attach to the end of it, because they did change the ending. Like, there's no Gilgamesh in their version. he's not going to find, this man, God actually, in the Gilgamesh rewarded their version of Noah with immortality. That's what Gilgamesh is after. He wants to figure out how this man became immortal because Gilgamesh doesn't want to die. And so he found this man who, saved all of these animals at, the beginning of creation. And he's still around because he's an immortal now. And Gilgamesh figures out that that's not really the deal that he wants. It's not that good a thing, ultimately.
Well, what I would say, my defense for that story, what I would say is like, okay, first off, that story can be found in probably 30, 40 different civilizations around the world. It does originate from the biblical definition of it, but that wasn't like the biblical definition of it wasn't, copied down or handwritten as it was happening. It was passed down by word of mouth until it was copied. So those other worlds.
Other civilizations before the Hebrews wrote it down, like they had copied. It's obvious that it had been written down by this other completely different civilization, and it's spread through the cradle of civilization, and it had, through oral traditions, as you said, been heard and passed to the Jews or the Hebrews who eventually wrote that down. But it had been written down thousands of years before in the other corner of the known world.
It had been written down after other civilizations had heard about it from us. So it's like our version of it.
No.
Is the original version.
Other civilizations first. No, you have that mistaken. It was written down by other civilizations first. We have found copies of it that are older than the copies of it.
It was written down by them first, but it wasn't them who because they wrote it down first is what happened. That it wasn't because of that it happened or.
That's not evidence that it originated in that corner of the world first.
There's a lot of evidence of it because you can see just by how the evolution of how other civilizations taken it that they built off of ours.
No, that's not clear at all.
Well, I happen to disagree with you there, but it's okay.
Do you have any evidence for why I should also disagree?
Because if you looked at, let's just say you wrote a book today, and then 20 years down the road you had a couple people make different versions of your story. You can see the evolution in the copying and retelling of your story. You'll see the base elements of it, but then you'll see where they splinter off. And that's exactly what you see when you see other civilizations talk about Noah's Ark.
Yes, and it's clear that the biblical account is an adaptation of this much older account that existed. I believe it was, I want to say somewhere in Mesopotamia, but I don't remember. The Akkadians, maybe? I don't remember who originally, the civilization that the first stories of Gilgamesh, or the story that actually includes the account of Noah's Ark. Because there are other versions of the Epic of Gilgamesh that don't have that. Like, that book alone, like, it has lots of different iterations, just like the Bible. It's a very, very old, very beloved and retold and maintained story that has, transcended even ancient civilizations. Like, these successive nations that occupied this geographic region, they had kind of different cultures, but they still had the story.
Yeah. Hey, just give me, I just gotta run, grab my computer charger and bring it in here. Just give me a second.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Sure, no problem.
Alright, go back. I'm back.
Where's your outlet?
Wait, hold on for 1 minute. What?
Where's your outlet?
What
I
do you
mean,
mean?
where's your plug-in? Let me see. I thought you were saying unplug the printer out of my laptop. I was like, what the fuck?
Alright, I'm back now.
I thought you were asking me if you can unplug the printer out of my laptop. I was like, what are you talking about?
No. You there?
I'm still here.
Alright. So, what was the last thing you said? Because I didn't quite hear you.
Gosh, I don't even remember.
Go on.
That I think we were the story of Noah's Ark and how that was, in my impression, adapted from this older story that was told by, I believe, the Akkadians. That is part of the Epic of Gilgamesh. That is, the story arc of Noah and what he does and his rewards that all tie into the Epic of Gilgamesh and the importance of previous events there, and that kind of speaks in favor of it being the original account, whereas Noah's just kind of a separate story. The ending's different. There's a rainbow. God makes a covenant. And it doesn't really tie into anything else, whereas in the Epic of Gilgamesh, it ties into the previous parts of the story. It's important because Gilgamesh loves Enkidu, and he doesn't want to die like he did. He goes off to find this another man. Yeah, I think that it is more likely than not that that's the older story, and that if nothing else, that shows that the Bible is an amalgam of human creation. It doesn't really have much to do with divine inspiration. I know that that's something that is taught and told in a tradition that's kept among the Christian faiths. But I don't think that there's any evidence in support of that. I think that it's just another subjective standard, and in fact, it's a subjective standard that Christians say they don't really adhere to, that they don't follow these ancient rules about slavery and these mandates from God to strike down these enemies of the ancient Hebrews, that they don't judge the world by that ancient subjective standard. And I think that further speaks in favor of morality being a subjective thing, that even your morality is subjective because you've learned it from the culture that you live in and from the people around you and your own experiences observing other people around you, how they're treated and how you want them to treat you. That all feeds into it, and that's what your actual standard of morality is. I understand that you would like to profess that this is not the case, but I don't think that there's any evidence that that's so.
Well, the reason when I differentiated before between Old Covenant and New Covenant for that very reason.
Right, and I've heard this, not to cut you off, but I have heard this before, but I think that those are just words used to dress up exactly what I said, to just sort of deflect away from that in this mysterious way that, well, there used to be this old covenant, but now there's this new covenant, and everything was in the old covenant. It's just on there. It's just in there for legacy reasons. It's just there because, it got grandfathered in. You don't have to worry about that. Just worry about this stuff. Yeah, I don't think that really flies, because then that raises the question of, okay, if God is eternal and his will is immutable, why did all the rules change at, 0 AD?
Well, that's probably closer to 4.
33 AD, or exactly where that line is, whichever. Wherever you draw that arbitrary line in the sand, like, why did that change if God is eternal? It just raises more questions than it actually answers.
Well, I'm sure David would probably disagree with me on that, but not that this makes any point, just to kind of give you some information. I actually personally agree. I actually personally think that or dating to it, because like this is coming from me. I've taken a lot of like world religion courses because I do study other religions too. Like I'm waiting for about 6 months for the shipment. It's supposed to be to me in about 6 months because it's coming from like Malaysia or something, and it's about Sikhism, and then yeah, like I studied Buddhism and Mormonism, stuff like that. Like I actually think the closer date.
Interesting. I don't know anything about Sikhs.
I don't know much about.
I recognize them by their particular headdress, but other than that, I don't know much about them.
Well, I don't either, but.
But please go on. I'm sorry.
That's fair. I'll inform you once I read the book. I think the actual closer date to his birth is probably around 4 BC, from what I've seen from classes and other religions. Because I mean, that's neither here nor there.
Was Jesus?
Yeah.
3 BC.
David thinks it's 3 BC. So.
Okay, well, I mean,
That's
whether
almost...
you would draw that line at 3 BC or 4 BC or 0 BC, or even at the time of his alleged crucifixion and resurrection, sometime 33 years after whatever that starting point is, why do the rules change? Wherever you draw that line, why did the rules change? Why did the covenant change? God is eternal. And
because
his
everything
will is eternal.
Because everything up until his birth was basically a foreshadowing of Jesus. You know what I mean?
No, I don't know what that means.
In essence, like the rituals,
I mean,
like the rituals of like a burnt offering or something like that, was a foreshadowing that there would be a death to cover sin. At least it's my understanding of it.
Okay. I still don't really understand why, if there is this objective standard that is universal, why Christian morality diverged so much from the old covenant that existed. I mean, it seems to imply that even in this there is some subjectivity. So, at least the subjectivity of time. That the people living before this period had one set of rules, and the people after this period had a different set of rules. And I would contend that reflects the people that are picking up this ancient tradition of the Bible, and they're applying what message they want to take from it and fitting it into what works for their society. And I think that speaks to subjectivity.
Well, I'll put it this way. I think both of us presented our case well enough for the people that are watching to be able to make a decision.
Sure. In that case, please just, I'm done. You can have the last words. I kind of already summarized what the last bit that I said. That I'm not going to repeat that.
Well,
but,
no.
Please have the last word.
No, that's okay. There is one other topic I wanted to hit with you real quick. Well, I don't know how quick it's going to be or how much time you have left.
We're probably going to have to wrap this up, so if it's going to take a while,
well,
maybe it's best saved for a different time.
All right. Well, I guess we could do that. But can I kind of ask you real quick, just to kind of get a brief description of what you think, or something, and then the next time we talk, we'll both be better armed to talk with each other.
Okay.
I noticed you and David were talking about presuppositionalism a lot in your debate with him. Like, what exactly? Like, why does that seem like such a? Because it almost seems like you're charging that argument as a logical fallacy, and I guess I just kind of want to know why.
Yeah, that's a big question. It's like I can't give you a concise answer in a couple of minutes on that, so I think that's probably best to save for another time.
All right.
Presuppositionalism is it's a very convoluted argument. It's circular. It's circular and almost it seems like a textbook definition of circular, and it's kind of solipsistic, and I don't think there's much use in it. In just even approaching the world in that way, and it's just not a very useful tool for a Christian. It's just not a useful tool objectively to evaluate the world in this kind of broken, uninformed way. That you genuinely think that you might not know anything. that's just lunacy. It's a non-starter. But yeah, that would be my concise answer. If you want to, we'll talk after this and try and set up something for, if you want to do a follow-up about presuppositionalism.
Okay. Yeah, I'd be interested in that. That's just kind of where I wanted to go with it. I think you just get a definition of it, but okay. Okay.
Hello, David. You could just ask me.
I said, what do you think presuppositionalism is?
I've heard the argument. It's from Seitan Rudinkate and I'm going to blank on his last name. His first name's Dustin. Dustin Seegers, I think his name is.
It is.
He was in it a little hangout just this last weekend. Yeah, I've heard a lot of Christian apologists use it. And
check out Dr. Greg Bonson. Seitan and Dustin Seegers are not good representations of presuppositional apologetics.
Okay. Well, we should definitely do another hangout on this, and we can all get on the same page. But I meant it before. I mean, if you want to sum up, this is your hangout. Please have the last word.
Well, I don't think really have anything to sum up. I think we both kind of presented our cases. Are pretty good. I think if there's there's a disconnect in what we're both saying. Like I feel like there's almost but there's a willingness, sort of, but kind of I don't want to say half-heartedly, but I just think that there's a misunderstanding and there's a disconnect in between why I'm saying, like, what I mean by objective morality, and at the same time, like, the things that we both would humanistically disagree with. I feel that I don't think I've conveyed my point well enough as to why they were, like, the Noah's Ark and the complete, like, destruction of everybody that existed on the earth then, and why I think that the decision, we'd have to get into presuppositionalism for people to fully understand it, but if it's a commandment by God, and God is morality, which is the basis pretty much of presuppositionalism, is that God just is, and that's the way it is, you'd have to understand that. So I guess there'd be a better understanding maybe on the part two than maybe you have. You get what I'm saying?
Yep.
All right. Well, sorry. I guess I'll be.
That would definitely be a good topic for another hangout. The presuppositionalism. I understand what you're saying, that it is kind of integral to that understanding, and I feel bad that we're not going to be able to get to that, but I really have to wrap it up for tonight.
That's okay.
Thank you very much. You've been, as David was, a very gracious host, very patient with me because of my stupidity with Google Plus.
It's all right. You've been nice too. Like I said in the beginning, you have no idea like how many times me and David will come across people that are just blatantly disrespectful just for the sake of being disrespectful. And
I know exactly what you mean, and I see so many atheists who are like that, and I just those people don't speak for all of us. It really doesn't. It doesn't improve the discourse to speak down to someone, or to speak harshly to someone, or make someone feel like less of a person for disagreeing with you.
I would like
at the
to
very least, you catch more flies with honey than you do with vinegar. I've always believed that.
I would like to say though, like when you first messaged me when you were talking about it, like I kind of thought you were gonna be like that based on because you said like the comment where you made where you were like, oh, just to warn you, I'm not as nice as FSX23 and Alex are. I was kind of expecting. What?
Yeah, it's all fine. Yeah, it's all fine. Oh.
No, he heard me. I was expecting you to be like that, but then I was pleasantly surprised.
He was saying that he was pleasantly surprised too. So, but yeah, I think well, they took the goal for the night, and when would be a good time? Do you know like when would be a good time to set up another one with you, or?
Let's talk about that off the air.
Okay.
So yeah, good night, everybody.
We should do a 2-on-2 sometime.
I might be able to get a second.
Hey, if you can, I also want to say one more thing real quick. That you made a note that There's a lot of atheists that are disrespectful. There's also a lot of Christians that are that way too, and I do recognize that. So I appreciate you being cordial with us. But
Hey,
Well,
me
I
and Alex.
appreciate your being great hosts. Thank you very much again.
thank you. Have a good night.
Take care.
You too. Bye.
Right, yeah, so now we're off the air. Yeah, if you want to send me a private message, I probably will be able to do this, around the same time next week if you want to, and that should give us enough time to maybe dredge up a second.
Hey,
Yeah.
GreyKnight.
Also, there's a lot of other channels. I don't know if you follow Disposable Gorilla online on YouTube. That's his
Hey.
name, one word, Disposable Gorilla.
Hey.
He's a Christian, Calvinist. He runs a lot of hangouts.
Hey,
Nice
GreyKnight. Hey, I was gonna say, me and Alex Boughton from Fundamentally Flawed, we're actually talking about because him and Kat wanted to have a discussion with me and Joe like this next weekend coming up. Like, would you care to join us on that?
I could do that. Yeah, my weekends, or at least in the near future, they're going to be kind of touch and go. Like, I don't think that I can schedule anything and be relied upon to show up for it.
Yeah, no, I understand. Like, that's what I told him, because he wanted to do it this weekend. But I told him since I just started fall semester, I'm really busy, so.
Yeah, if maybe we could, maybe not this weekend, but next weekend, I might be able to do something in the evenings, either Saturday or Sunday. But yeah, I'll be in touch. If you want to send me a private message, or Joe can send me a private message.
Okay.
If not Alex, I could probably find a second.